Oh, do I need my microphone? No, I have this on.
All right, we're live. Well, welcome to the clinic.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
thanks.
Do you want to introduce yourself for those who maybe don't know you very well?
What? Likely no one knows me at all. But I'm
Okay.
Zach, and you're Laura. And
Tell them a
so,
little bit about what you do.
uh, okay, so I'm a couples therapist in Seattle, Washington, and I see couples in private practice, and I hang out with Laura on the side, and we talk about stuff. We talk
On the
about marriage
side,
therapy. Yeah,
we hang out doing exactly what we're doing right now because
yeah.
I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm also a couples therapist. So I specialize in couples therapy. You also specialize in couples therapy, right?
Yep, yep.
But you do see individuals.
Every once in a while, I'll see some individuals, but I always tell them, I give them fair warning that I'm not that good at it, and I don't like
I
it that
agree.
much.
I
Um,
agree. It feels a
oh,
lot like friendship, like they come in, we chit chat, and then they leave. But
so
I
you
also,
agree? You agree that you're not that good at it?
I agree, probably you're not great at it either.
Okay. I'm like, I'm not that good at it. You're like, I agree. You're not that good
I
at it. So
agree. Yeah.
thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yep. So we're both therapists. We at one time lived together in the same state.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
And then we also worked together while we were at the Gottman Institute, and we've
it's
just
true.
had friendly banter back and forth and created something really special. This last year we created Marriage Therapy Radio, which has been a highly successful podcast. It's been listened to by over 56 billion people.
Yeah.
Amazing, right?
If we
Yeah,
do say so ourselves, it's the most
we
successful podcast in the history of podcasts. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
So now we're doing these monthly clinics where we invite our patrons who have joined to support Marriage Therapy Radio, because we are just these therapists, and on the side we love to be able to reach as many couples as possible. And by the wonders of the interwebs and sound waves, that's what we're doing. So the monthly clinics are happening on a regular basis, and I wanted to let you know that the next clinic is going to be happening on Thursday, February 7th at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I will say that again, but in case you enjoy this and you continue to be a patron of Marriage Therapy Radio, that's when the next clinic is happening. And we are really open to your suggestions of what feels most pertinent in your life. Infidelity came up as something just around the holidays that we were experiencing kind of an uptick of recent disclosures, and people who are also struggling around the holidays with maybe perhaps infidelity that's happened in the past. So that's why we chose this topic, but we're not married to a topic. Get it? Married to a topic for February. So we would
Yeah.
love to take your suggestions. You can get a hold of us by emailing info@forbetter.us, and it's FORBETTER.us. And that is my intro.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to also tell them about the bonus that they may get if they stick around till the very end?
That's enough of a tease as I
Okay.
like. So if you
All
stick
right.
around to the end, we will send you a bonus. You'll hear about the bonus, the special thing. And then also, if you're unable to attend all of this, maybe you are just checking in, you want to see how things are going. If you're not able to stick around to the very end, we will be recording this, and I will email it out to every one of our patron subscribers. So yeah,
Cool.
cool.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
you're not wrong. I think this topic is one that I think it comes up for me every year about this time, because for some reason the holidays bring out disclosure. And I think I told you I had about four or five emails right around Christmas Day, actually, of
Wow.
people who wanted to get in kind of as soon as possible because of some discovery about an infidelity. And it wasn't always a physical relationship. Sometimes it was an emotional relationship. Sometimes it was decades old. It
Right.
wasn't even like something that had recently happened. But it amazes me that the holidays tend to do this. And so I was actually at an event a couple weeks ago with another therapist, and he was getting a similar email while he was sitting next to me. And he said, I just wish people would stop having affairs. And I said,
Mm,
I actually like working with people who have come in on the heels of infidelity. I think
I
because
agree.
it's really an opportunity to reevaluate what the relationship is about and whether or not it has the sort of spine to survive
Mhm.
what essentially becomes the next version of the relationship. And
Mhm.
so over the course of that time, I've kind of come up with 5 things that I generally try to tell people right away particularly the harmed spouse. So in a situation where there's been infidelity, a lot of times we like to call it betrayal. And so there's the betrayer and the betrayed. And I think that kind of stigmatizes it a little bit more than it needs to. And so a therapist that I respect, he generally calls it the involved partner is the partner who has been involved with someone else. And then there's the harmed partner, who is the partner that has been hurt. And one thing that
Which
I want to...
Which is kind of interesting. I just wanted to butt in just a little bit is sometimes it's not as cut and dry. Sometimes both partners are the harmed and both partners are the involved. I've had couples that have come in where where they both were having relationships with other people, whether that be like what you said, sexual, emotional, they were, they were crossing boundaries essentially, and breaking the ties of their marital bond. So the involved partner and the harmed partner is what we're really speaking about. Okay.
And this webinar today is really about 5 truths of infidelity, really for the harmed partner. Meaning this is what I hope that the partner who has been on the receiving end of the betrayal, or who has discovered this cross boundary, just some anchoring truths for them to be able to hold on to. And I want to caveat that though, because I think it's important for me to say up front without stigmatizing anyone. Hold on. Whoa. It's real life, folks. Nobody's getting that edited out. That I have, excuse me. I have never, ever seen a couple recover from infidelity when the harmed partner didn't own some portion of their role in the relationship. I am not saying it's your fault. I'm not saying that you are responsible or you could have stopped it. I'm just saying that there's always a fracture in the relationship that leads to poor coping. And when that, and both partners are a part of that always. And if as the harm partner, you can't say some version of, I know I'm a part of this, it's really hard to achieve recovery. So I'll leave it at that for now, but then,
I imagine that's really a really tough thing to hear as sort of like one of the first sort of truths that you're laying down.
Well, it's not one of the first 5. It's just one. It's not one of the 5 major ones. It's more like, I don't want anybody listening to these and going, yeah, I'm justified, or yeah, I get to be angry, or yeah, I want you to say, whoa, I wonder what these can do to help me own that this is really complicated. So that'd be my main thrust, I think, at the moment.
Okay. And something that I'm thinking about too is that we talked about this on our last podcast that's going to come out probably next week, is this whole idea that we recognize that most people who are listening to our podcast are singles. It's not like they're sitting down and they're sharing a cup of tea with their partner and they're both listening to the podcast at the same time and saying, let's discuss. That would kind of be awesome though. I would love that.
Yeah.
But most people who are attending this webinar are a single person in a relationship who has been affected at some point by infidelity. And you're speaking specifically to the harmed partner. And I know you have language to be able to speak to the involved partner, but I do think that this would be really helpful for you to, when you receive the recording, because we are recording this webinar, when you receive it, to say, hey, I think this might be really helpful for you to watch, because I do think that there's a lot of insight that the involved partner can get by watching a webinar that speaks to the harmed partner.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So again, most of this has come organically up through just me being in practice over a dozen years or so and having walked through this story many, many, many times. But the first thing that I would want the couple to know, and in particular the harmed partner, is that they are not alone, that this is not especially unique, that infidelity is actually pretty common. About 41% of all marriages will experience infidelity at some point. And that is a pretty high number when you think about it. A lot of people, though, when they have this experience of infidelity or of discovery, the first thing that happens is that they feel isolated. They feel like this, how could this happen to me? I can't let anybody know. I don't know who to talk about. And a lot of times you go straight to sort of shame or anger, or on the other side, you go through, which kind of takes you inward. Or on the other side, you go to this kind of like, oh my gosh, can you believe this happened? And you sort of tell everyone, which is also an isolating experience because people don't know how to handle this appropriately. So I think that the very first thing that I would say is that if you are feeling like somehow you're unique or somehow you're special or somehow you're cursed uniquely, that is actually not the case. If you look around, you're driving down the street, and you're just stuck in traffic and you look at the 10 cars around you, about 4 of those people have had a similar experience. So there's no reason for you to feel like somehow you've been singled out or somehow your partner is uniquely sinister, because this is more common than most people want to wrap their heads around.
Yeah. And the other statistic that I really liked was that 1 in 10 marriages are currently experiencing infidelity. So if 41%, 4 out of 10 relationships experience infidelity at some point throughout their union, 1 in 10 are experiencing it at this very moment. And that's interesting because I'm just looking at the 10 houses on my block, and sometimes you just don't realize the pain that some people are going through, and you feel like you're the only one that is experiencing this. And in fact, you're not. So you have some survival steps that I really like that help people. It's like, okay, great. Well, I am one of those people that are going through infidelity. What should I do in this case? And one of your survival steps is just really take great care of yourself, to eat, to sleep, to exercise, to just make sure that you are taking care of you. And maintaining that self-care that's so important. Yeah,
it's really, really critical that you protect sort of your physiology, right? Because your psychology is going to be reeling. Your psychology is going to take you all over the place. So as much as you're able, even if you have to mechanize it or sort of like force it, you need to eat, you need to drink plenty of water, you need to sleep, you need to go for walks, you need to exercise, you need to maintain as much of your physical routine as possible. If only to control the things that you can control, and that you're going to feel like you're out of control. And so in this case, you've got to find a way to really settle into things that are going to be predictable for you, because the next few phases are going to be unpredictable.
Yeah. And I would say that depression is probably one of those things that a lot of people experience. And when folks are experiencing depression, one of the ways that we know people are depressed when they come to see us is that there are things that they once enjoyed doing that they just sort of stopped doing. At one time, they really enjoyed cooking some novel things in the kitchen. And now they realize that they have just it's fallen off the map. They're going out to eat every single night. McDonald's has become their best friend. So I would say find those things that you really enjoy doing and try really hard to continue doing that. Zach, I'm just going to kind of out you a little bit. If you're a listener of Marriage Therapy Radio, which I know many of you are, you really enjoy, swimming. And there are phases where you go through phases where you swim a lot and then you don't necessarily swim as much. Yep. And if you know that that's something that you rely on, and for me, it's exercise, just going back to that and being really intentional about that self-care, specifically exercise, to be able to release those endorphins and help get you up and out of the clouds a little bit.
And you really like McDonald's, right? That's your thing?
I love McDonald's, actually. Yeah. I would love to be a sponsor for them and, have a microphone about McDonald's. Okay, so step number 2 with this first truth of you are not alone is to find a therapist. Find a support.
Yeah, or find somebody that you can kind of work through this with you. I mean, someone knows what you've been through. Someone can handle this story, and it may be, it's probably more likely a therapist or a pastor or someone in sort of a non-relationship role. Like, it's kind of hard if it's your best friend or your parents, because they tend to want to side with you and they tend to want to and that's fine. You need people on your side. You need people on your team. But what you want is somebody who can hold your story and who can hold it without panicking or increasing your sense of sort of anxiety. And so I think, if you're going to survive these first feelings of being isolated, again, maintain your physical schedule, and then also find someone that you can begin to talk to. And some of us are fortunate enough to have good friends who can ground us. But you definitely don't want to talk to the friend who's more dramatic than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I just wrote a piece recently for an article and it was saying, what's really helpful advice. And one of the pieces that I gave is you want to find that friend that will that will allow you to emote.
Mm,
Because oftentimes what we do when a person is in pain is we try and help them mask that pain or try and help them forget the pain in some way.
mm,
But the truth is that the pain is there and you have to move through the emotion. You can't just mask it or push it away or try to ignore it because it's always going to stick around until you actually express it, move through it, process it. And
yeah.
so if you're choosing a friend that wants to take you out and get drunk, or choosing a friend that wants to say, hey, let's go to a bar and let's find you the hottest person in the bar so you can go home and make love to them. And, since your partner cheated on you, then you should cheat on them. That's not the friend for you. The friend for you is the person that's going to say, come over and put your feet up on the couch. And here is a big towel and you can cry into the towel and I will hold you. I'll hold that space for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. So what's your second truth? The first one
Okay.
being you are not alone. The second truth.
Well, the second, I mean, all of these come from, I think, things that people are asking themselves, right? So they're saying, oh my gosh, am I alone? Or who? The second one is, am I crazy? Like, how did I miss this? And I want to tell you, you're not crazy. Like you probably are looking back after disclosure at all the different things that don't quite add up and the different like kind of lost time or lost money and going, well, how did I miss that? Like, what is that about? And the reality is that affairs are not about the sex and they're not necessarily even about the emotional connection. They're really about the secret. They're really about the energy that goes into hiding. And so it's easy to miss that because
Right.
I say we, but people work really hard to protect their secret. And, and I think it's really important to understand that after you discover and you go back and you start to replay things in your mind, that doesn't mean that you're a fool. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It means that that
you trusted your partner. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. Well, it means you trusted your partner and you got tricked by someone who was trying to trick you.
Right.
And again, who knows about their motives? That could be because they're evil, because they're an addict, it could be because they're dumb, but it doesn't make you crazy. It makes you, it makes you harmed. And that's an important part for you to understand.
Mm. It's interesting because I was just thinking about this the other day. I took a course in college with my undergrad, which is one of the ways that I knew that I was heading in the right direction as far as finding my path to become a therapist. And the course was called The Dark Side of Love. And really what that was doing was it was talking about sort of the crazy feelings that people experience when they are hurt. And it's interesting because you really do start to feel kind of crazy. Like you go along life and you have your person, you have your attachment, you have the trust built up with them, and then all of a sudden it breaks. And then you start to feel like you are absolutely crazy, that you are now all of a sudden you're trying to find truth where you thought truth was. And you're starting to try and put together the timeline of the past. So you have a recent betrayal and discovery, and what you thought were the last three, but there sudden that wasn't truth. And you have to make sense of the last 3 months. So you might start going through and trying to break into emails and trying to break into cell phones. And like you feel like a crazy person because you're doing these
you feel like not
to try
you,
and find,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I often ask the involved partner when they come in, I say, hey, if I asked you a year ago if you'd have an affair, what would you say? And they would say, oh, never. I would never have an affair. And it's like, so somehow you lost your identity in the last year, right? But the same thing goes for the person who's been harmed. Like, if I asked you a year ago if you'd be combing through your partner's phone and emails, like, what would you say?
Right.
Oh, I would never do that. Well, now you are, because you've lost a piece of your identity, but it doesn't make you crazy. I like to tell this story, which is that when I was researching this earlier on, I bought a book and it was in the backseat of my car, and it's called, it's about people who have post-infidelity stress disorder. So it's PISD. And my daughter, who was 11 at the time, she said, Dad, I didn't know people could have a disease called pissed. And I was like, yeah, they actually can. That's exactly what it is.
You're pissed.
Yeah.
Did you find that book helpful?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. I mean, I think it depends on what your where you're at. I mean, for some people who have read it, they find that it makes them more angry, but others, it gives a real good tips for how to kind of calm down as you're dealing with post-traumatic or post-infidelity stress. And one of them is just to take notes, right? Just to practice. I call it practice truth telling. You know, the truth is you're not crazy, that you've been traumatized, and both of those things can be true at the same time. But I think as you're starting to wonder about the questions, the things you missed, the things that you don't understand, write them down. Just make a list. When you have questions, like it might not be time to ask those questions yet, but it is time to get them out of your brain and into a place that they can be held, even by like a little journal. Because if you keep asking yourself these questions all over and over again, questions that you don't have an answer to, it's going to make you feel crazy. Yeah. So if you can get the questions down, not unlike making a grocery list, frankly, that you can come back to later when it's the appropriate time, then I think it's a little bit easier.
I think those questions, this is just a little bit of a, I don't know, a lead into the recovery phase. So right now we're just talking about truths of infidelity, but there is recovery steps for infidelity. And one of those recovery steps is, I don't know why we both have this cough, is finding out the truths. So if you have all of these questions that you're trying to find answers to, and you're keeping a journal and you're writing them down, eventually you want the answers to those questions. And your partner, who is the involved partner, if they're engaged in the process of healing and wanting to recover from this affair, from this betrayal, then absolutely they're giving you the answers to those questions. So I think,
I think that there's a time and a place, right? Like, I think you have to learn how to ask those questions in the right way, in the right time, with the right help. You can't just say, hey, because here's the thing, there are some things you can't unhear, and maybe you don't actually need the answer to some of the questions that you're asking. And sometimes an honest answer is, I don't know if you want the answer to that question.
Right.
And a therapist or a pastor or a trusted friend who's a friend of the marriage can help you do that, I think, effectively.
I'm going to say that I don't think that this recovery, like going through the recovery process, yes, you absolutely need somebody to lean on, but I think it's a difference between having somebody to lean on when you are in the midst of a recent discovery of betrayal versus a couple working with a therapist, a really trained, skilled therapist, to bring that marriage back together, if that's the direction you want to go. Because I think what I heard you say, Zach, just then, is that a pastor or a friend, a trusted friend, is going to be someone who can help guide you through that process. And I just wanted to make sure that you were clear and that I was clear that this isn't a place for a friend to help your marriage.
Yeah.
But it absolutely can be a person that you can rely on to help not feel so isolated in the process.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah.
I concede that point.
Okay.
Okay.
What is your third truth?
Well, it's a third question that people are asking, which is somehow this idea of is this my fault? Like, did I do this? Or did you do this because I'm not pretty enough, or because I'm not smart enough, or because I don't make enough money? Like, what is this about? And it's not your fault. But again, I kind of go back to that first piece that I said, which is that you do have some part in the relationship, the broken relationship that led to poor coping. So you do want to figure out what your contribution is, but you're not responsible for your partner's choices. You're not responsible for the pain that they caused. You're not responsible for the way that they chose to cope. You're not responsible for that they had an opportunity to turn towards you and didn't. That's not your fault. Something else is your responsibility, but your partner didn't cheat because of you. And I think sometimes they want to say that they did. Sometimes they'll go, well, you're not, and you're not, and you're not. Well, that's just a lie. They're lying to you and they're lying to themselves. Yeah. Because I frankly don't think you have enough power to make somebody make choices that they don't want to make.
Right. Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, is something that you said, which was we always say this, you are 100% responsible for your relationship. So you have two individuals that are showing up 100%, each of you.
Yeah. Yeah, we often say
Agree.
it's 50-50, and then we'll correct the other one and say, no, it's 100-100.
It's 100-100. So you're
Yeah.
both showing up 100% responsible for this relationship. But what you said makes perfect sense. And I really loved it. Is that you said you are not at fault and you are not responsible for your partner's choices in this. So can you help tease the difference between that, what you're hoping they will take some responsibility for in the relationship?
Well, I mean, I think it's just, I mean, who knows, right? It could be that I missed the clues, right? Or it could be that I was too busy to notice that you were sad. It could be that I was. I mean, there's any number of things that could be that you could take responsibility for. But it's not. I didn't go to the gym enough. It's not. I didn't bring home enough money. It's those are justifications that partners latch onto to make themselves feel better, but it's not the reality for how they end up making their choices. And so you can, if you start to hear that stuff or you start to entertain that stuff, it's really important just to put it out of your mind and say, no, I can own this. I can own A, B, or C, but it's not X, Y, and Z that I'm going to own.
So are you saying that it could be that the relationship was in a place it was struggling? Like maybe you have two partners that were just absolutely neglectful of one another. They were too involved with work. They were too engaged with work. They weren't giving each other the benefit of the doubt. The relationship was crummy, and one partner decided to step outside of the relationship and break the boundaries that they had established. What I think you're saying is that it's taking some ownership that this relationship was crummy, or this relationship was going down a slippery slope, or whatever it might be. There was some part of the relationship that was not great.
Yeah.
You did not make the choice to step outside of the marriage. Your partner did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think this is the part that this is where I do have a little bit more empathy, or I don't freak out about affairs, because what an affair is, it's a type of betrayal. And betrayal is the issue. Affair isn't the issue. And some people betray by becoming workaholics, or by drinking too much, or by loving their kids too much, or by being more committed to their CrossFit class than they are to their relationship. Like, there's lots of ways that you can betray. This is the one that gets the headlines, right? This is the one that people can label and go, I would never do that. And the reality is that we are all betrayers. And some of us attach that betrayal to another person. And that's where this starts to get crazy, right? But I don't think it's I don't want to minimize it, but I think if you can put it in the category of betrayal versus the category of the specific betrayal, it's a little bit easier to stomach the fact that you played a part.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important to say, that there are lots of ways that we betray one another all throughout our relationship. And some of them are sort of minor offenses. I read a great article recently, and it basically said in the course of a relationship, we have these misdemeanors, and then sometimes we have these felonies. And what gets the headlines as a felony is like a sexual betrayal, an ongoing relationship that's been a secret. And that's sort of the felony offense, versus a misdemeanor, which might be, I got a bonus from work, $5,000 bonus, and I didn't tell you. And I opened up a secret account and I never told you about it. And we usually put all of our money into one bank account. And so now that betrayal of not telling your partner about this, that's maybe a misdemeanor, but it's all about how you'd classify it. So tell me about the survival steps for this particular.
Well, I think the first thing you need to do, not the first thing you need to do, this is all woven into the whole thing, but I think part of what you need to do is figure out what you believe about forgiveness, right? Because when it's not your fault, then that begins to entertain, of course, that it's someone else's fault, right? We have this idea of fault. And so you have to figure out, like, what do you think about forgiveness? And the easiest and the example is people who are Christians, right? The Christian faith is based on this idea that Christ forgave me, so I should forgive other people. Like, that's a philosophy of forgiveness. Another one perhaps is this idea that I forgive because I don't want to hold on to anger or toxic. For me to hang on to this is toxic. So I forgive for my sake, not for the other person's sake. That's a philosophy of forgiveness. And part of what you have to understand is, like, what is it that I need to do in the arena of forgiveness in order to move on. And it may not be that you're ready to forgive yet. It means that you have to understand what is required for you to engage a conversation around forgiveness. Some people think that the partner needs to apologize before they can forgive, while others are like, the apology isn't required. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think for you to find your own voice in that is really, really critical, because it's the place of gentleness, it's the place of grace that is actually going to serve you. And then actually on the other side, I think that another survival step is to like take a kickboxing class or something. Like find a way to let your anger go somewhere. Yeah. I mean,
channel that anger.
Into
or
an
maybe a
appropriate
really
place.
Gentle painting class where all you do is paint like the damnations of hell.
Yeah. But I think you got to find a place to channel your anger in an appropriate way. And again, my bias in this is that that's for you, right? Because if you hang on to your anger, or if you direct it at your partner specifically or exclusively, then it's going to stay inside the relationship. It's going to stay inside you, and it's not going to have a place to go or flow. And so I think finding a place to channel your anger, there's remember when coloring was a big thing, adult coloring books?
Oh, it's still so in. Are you talking about the one with the curse words?
Yeah, there's one you can buy it. It's just full of like, curse words and different phrases that are vile and so there's sort of a
color in the lines.
Yeah, there's sort of a paradox to be coloring, fuck you with your cute little pencils, But that's a place that you can let your anger go, and I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay, so you are not alone. You are not crazy. You're not at fault. What's the next one?
Well, this is my favorite, and it's also the hardest one for people to hear, which is that your marriage is over. At least your first marriage, the marriage that you initially decided on. Because what happened was you stood up and you in front of God and country and the justice of the peace and all your people, and you said something like, I do this thing, I do that thing, I do the other thing. And then
made vows to one another.
Yeah, you made vows, and then you broke them, or someone broke them. And so basically someone said, I don't anymore. And that means that the first contract is over. The first contract that you made is null and void.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing for people to wrap their heads around, because what people say to me often enough is, I'll say, what do you want? They'll say, I want to go back to what we had. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah, right? I just said this to a client yesterday.
Because what you had didn't work, right? What you had led to this fissure. What you want is something new. What you want is something, a new contract, a new version. And I think it's really wonderful when people can begin to establish what the terms of that new contract are. Like, if I'm going to stay married to you, if we're going to continue to do this, then these are the new terms. These are the new vows. And I think that can be really beautiful if you can wrap your head around it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I say the same thing. I have a 3-year-old, so he just learned Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again. And that's exactly what I tell couples when they come to see me is, you're coming to me broken in a million little pieces, and I am not going to get out my super glue and try and find which piece fits to which, so that I can put your marriage 1.0 together, so that you can be a marriage with a million cracks. What I am interested in is helping you to understand, what are the new vows? What is the new contract? How is your life now? And what are you being intentional about in your relationship? How can you make this relationship better than the last one? Because I know for a fact that something was not right in the last marriage that led to some really bad betrayals between the two of you. But what I am interested in is what you said is something quite lovely, where a couple comes together and they say, I still choose you. I choose to be your partner, and that can be powerful. And I choose you, and this is the marriage I want to live. And these are the vows that I make to you. And that's where sometimes couples have these beautiful new commitment ceremonies to one another when they do get through the thick of it. And they say, we're making marriage 2.0 at this point.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
quite
it's called redemption, right? And in the same way that you have to kind of figure out what you believe about forgiveness, you have to figure out what you believe about redemption. And, you know, everybody's favorite movie or everybody's best friend's favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption. It's literally about what happens when something broken gets fixed or something gets restored. And it's the same thing with It's a Wonderful Life and Return of the Jedi and Les Mis. I mean, all of these are about things that were rock bottom that somehow became more whole when they traveled through that rock bottom. And I think if you can find that version of that story for yourself, it can be really beautiful, right? The last 10 minutes of the movie are always the best because they tell this really great recovery story. And I think one of the survival steps that I had outlined was go ahead and watch these movies. Go believe in hope. Go look at somebody who is absolutely broken and at the bottom of their barrel and watch them come out and see if you can latch onto some of that hope, and let it replace some of your powerlessness. I mean, that's the reality of what redemption is about.
Yeah. I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the things that we say as therapists is that generally when individuals choose to get married, in their mind, they already have this idea of these are the things that I know I will leave my partner for. I will absolutely leave this marriage. If this happens, this happens, this happens. And sometimes therapists call it the 3 A's, the big offenses. And that's affair, abuse, and addiction. Yeah, affair, abuse, and addiction. In their mind, they're thinking, if these 3 things happen, I will absolutely leave this marriage. And interestingly enough, I think that marriages are so much more resilient than we give them credit for. And I think that oftentimes it's very difficult to stand at this point in the road, at this juncture, and have a recent disclosure of a partner being betraying you and saying, but I decided before we got married that if this ever happened, I was going to leave you. And now all of a sudden I'm feeling like I can't do that. I don't necessarily want to do that. And it's a really unsettling feeling because anytime you're in that gray area and you're unsure, unclear, like what you said, you have a lack of control. It's a very uncomfortable, unsettling feeling. That's uncomfortable. But I'm here to tell you that there are so many marriages that come out on the other side after having a betrayal in infidelity where they do feel stronger and they're glad that they stuck it out. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so before we get to the 5th one, I think the other thing that I offer around this idea of, excuse me, of your marriage is over is that it's time to begin to think about if indeed you're not willing to walk away or if you suspect you're not willing to walk away, what is it that you're walking toward? What is the new contract? What are the conditions of the new relationship? What do you need? What are you going to say yes to now that you know what it means to say no? Because it's a different contract, and it's more informed, it's stronger actually. But you got to start to lay it down. And you know what? Frankly, it's a gift to your partner, the one who is involved, to say, "Hey, I'm willing to hang in there with you, but this is what I'm going to need." And they can sometimes say, "I can't give that to you." And that's sometimes the deal.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, give me your last one.
Well, the last one I think is we've been teasing the whole time, which is that I absolutely convinced that you can survive a betrayal. You can survive an affair. Relationships that do can be really beautiful. It's hard. It is challenging. It is excruciating, but it is really. It's really beautiful when people lean in and decide that they're going to make it work after they hit rock bottom. You need to tap into the resources you have, of course, but you do have access to support. You do have control of your thoughts. You do have an ability to respond. And you can create marriage number two if you're willing to lean into it. And I can speak from experience. I can speak from personal experience. I mean, it's part of Rebecca and I's open story that we went through a similar situation about, I don't know, 13 years ago. Like, and we would universally say that the relationship that we discovered after that period is better than the relationship that we had before. And so both as a therapist and as a person, I just offer that if you find yourself in a position of hopelessness, it doesn't have to be. Like, there really is a way through what seems like the most horrible thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that personal detail. I've known that
Sure.
about you and Rebecca, but it's nice for other people to know, again, you're not alone. Your marriage is not immune to it, and nor are, our listeners' marriages immune to infidelity and betrayal in their relationship.
Yeah.
So what are these survival steps that you have for feeling like they can survive this relationship?
Well, I think part of it is just deciding whether or not you believe the five truths, right? Or deciding specifically whether or not you believe the fifth one, which is, can I get through this? Like, will you let yourself believe in that? And that's not without condition. It's not blind. It's just informed by your idea of forgiveness, your idea of redemption, and your knowledge of yourself and your partner, and whether or not there's a way forward for the two of you. And there may not be, and that's okay. But I think part of what makes it possible for you to get through this is some determination and some conviction. So that's step number one, is to really do the work of figuring out whether or not this is the kind of work that you want to, right? And I think getting a professional help is the key. It's really hard to do this alone. And so whether that's a therapist or a book, or again, a pastor or a support group, some kind of formal help is going to be required to help you move through this process.
So I do want to just spend a moment, because I think oftentimes people, they just don't know where to go. They've never had a marriage therapist. And I think as marriage therapists, we oftentimes will see the couples coming in where they're literally just hemorrhaging. They hemorrhage all over the floor. They're like, we just recently had a recent disclosure of infidelity. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten. I am absolutely at the bottom of life right now, bottom of the pit. And it's hard to know where to go because you've never seen a marriage therapist. So I just want to give a little bit of guidance of helping people find a specialist in their area, because I don't want you to go to your school counselor, your kid's school counselor, and saying, hey, can you help me? Or even going to there are people who specialize. So I would say number one is you want to find somebody who is a marriage therapist. That's what they say that they are, because you can specialize in individuals, you can specialize in anxiety, depression. There's all these different specialties out there, but you want to find somebody who is accustomed to working with two individuals or families. Number two is when they list their specialties as under a marriage and family therapist, you want to find somebody who has a pretty short list. And on that short list is affair. Or betrayals or infidelity, whatever title they want to use that. Because if you find a generalist, they are not going to be a specialist. And you really want to find somebody who specializes in infidelity that can work with you. I think also something that's important to know is, and a question that a lot of people, they're not sure how to ask this, is the idea of being pro-marriage. Am I saying that correctly?
Sure. Yeah.
So there are different schools of thought, and there are some therapists that will absolutely do everything they possibly can to keep your marriage together. And then there are some therapists that look at all of the possibilities, and if it's a better option for the two of you to separate, sort of like there are some people in this world where their value system is no divorce, absolutely no divorce. And where just knowing your values and what you're looking for will be helpful when trying to find a therapist for you. So that would be my sort of pointers. Do you have any other pointers when looking for a marriage therapist that can help with support?
I just think that, ideally you find someone that you both have a rapport with, because it doesn't work when either partner believes that the therapist is siding with the one or the other, right? Like, so it's really important that you find someone that you feel like both of you can trust, and who's able to hold both stories with sort of equal value, and who is able to speak truth. I mean, I'm always a big fan of rapport as a primary category.
I do have a little bit of a warning, a caveat, because oftentimes what will happen is if there has been a recent disclosure, oftentimes the harmed partner will seek out support of an individual therapist, and you gain rapport with your individual therapist. And I will tell you that sometimes having an individual therapist where you're talking about the relationship and talking about the betrayal will lead toward a more likelihood of that relationship splitting up, rather than finding a marriage therapist in conjunction with an individual therapist. So my recommendation would be, if you're going to get an individual therapist and you want to keep this, you want to work on the relationship, get a couples therapist as well, and do those in conjunction, because oftentimes it can be one-sided, and that individual therapist, all they can do is support you, which sometimes means that they're not supporting the marriage. And if it's your hope of maintaining a healthy, happy marriage and, building marriage 2.0, that's going to require a marriage therapist. Okay. You're like, okay. All right. Anything else on this, or shall we give a couple of announcements?
Announcements. Did you have any questions? Did we get some questions?
I did not see any questions, because I think we actually didn't have our questions panel open. I know, right. Unfortunately. But the good news is that we have gathered, all of these truths were built off of questions that we have received from couples. So I apologize. That was our fault. We didn't have the notes section on where you could type in questions. So if you have questions after watching this, send them to us. We'd be happy to respond. And maybe we can do a follow-up webinar where all we do is answer some of the questions that you had. That sounds like a good idea to me. Okay. Here's a couple of announcements. So the first one I had said, our next clinic is coming up on Thursday, February 7th at 1:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you have any suggestions of things that you want us to specifically speak to and give you some just guidance on, let us know. Email us. That's info@forbetter.us. We also have our next workshop that's coming up in Seattle, Washington, and that's a really fun time for the two of us. I have to say that's where we shine, because we are in the same room at the same time for a weekend. It's really fun. So that's coming up March 22nd and 23rd. And if you want to register for that, we do have limited space. So I think we're only accepting about 25 couples this time.
Yeah.
So only about 25 couples will be able to come, and it's a Friday evening from 6 o'clock to 9:00 p.m. and then a Saturday from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. So it's nice because you get an opportunity. If you're not from Seattle, we have some couples that are coming up from California, kind of all over like the Pacific Northwest area. You can get a hotel room in Seattle, engage, make it like a whole like retreat experience for you. And then you still get the rest of your weekend. So that's $287, a steal of a deal, because we also feed you lunch and snacks. So that's pretty awesome. What else? Any other questions? Oh, here we go. The promo.
Yeah.
This is what we teased at the beginning. So if you would like to attend the Seattle March workshop, I'm going to give you a promo code. The promo is clinic. It's all undercase, lowercase. So you just put clinic in, and you save $50 off of $287. So that's quite the deal. Okay?
That's $50, yeah.
That's $50.
Dinner.
That is dinner. We're basically from us to you. In Seattle, let's be honest, it's happy hour. It's not really dinner.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. So you can register by going to our website, marriagetherapyradio.com. We have a tab that says workshops up at the top. Anything else, sir?
No, I'm good.
What are you going to do with the rest of your day?
I have clients the rest of the day, and
then
soccer practice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Soccer practice for yourself or for your daughter?
No, for Mary.
Okay. Are you playing soccer these days?
I am. I play indoor with old guys. I'm in an over 40 league.
I know that.
It's inside so that I don't run too fast and pull a hamstring.
Well, yeah. Did
No,
you
I
do
have like a little box that if I'm in open space, I'll pull a hamstring. So
that?
I'm in a little box that keeps me contained.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I sent my husband last night to candlelight yoga. Literally kicked him out of the house. I was like, here's your mat. Here's the directions. Go to candlelight yoga because he has a bad back. And that's the only way I can get him out of the house is dangling the carrot of, you don't have to put our kid to sleep. You get to go do yoga.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will catch you later.
Yeah. I will say again, if you had questions, because it was my fault that for all of the attendees, I did not add in the question panel. Email them to us and we will make sure to do a follow-up. So it's info@forbetter.us. All right. Bye, Zach.
Later.
Bye, friends. Thanks for joining.